Testing. I was having a conversation with one of my sellers today. She was talking about somebody that's potentially interested in purchasing a house as a lease purchase. Of course, a lease purchase is that you're leasing a home with the intention to buy the property at a certain specific time, at a certain price point, with other contingencies involved in that process. And being mindful that every process as it relates to any profession, specifically when you're spending the kind of money that you're going to be spending and tying yourself up in some type of legalities, should be ran by an attorney first and foremost. Number two, if you're dealing in a certain specific skill set like real estate, you also want to have a real estate professional involved in the negotiations on both sides of it, for the tenant and also for the actual homeowner. Another thing that we see a lot of, or often see of, is that you have tenants in place in a property, and the owner wants to sell the property, and the owner wants to sell to the tenants. And so sometimes they'll contact me, hey Terrence, I got a client, or I got a tenant that wants to purchase my property, what do I need to do? And what we want to do is, number one, get them both to understand what terms are going to be acceptable for both parties, because every deal is unique. It's not the same as a traditional transaction, so it's tailored to that particular owner of the property and the tenant. But being mindful that the way you structure the deal is likely helps increase or decreases the chance of success on that particular transaction. In this case, we're talking about lease purchases. So lease purchases statistically don't have a high rate of the end result being that the person end up buying a home, because oftentimes the clauses in any deal can actually kill the deal. So in lease purchases, oftentimes they have a certain time period in order to be able to facilitate being able to make that deal happen. And so, for example, a person may say, you know what, I think my credit score is good, I think debt to income ratio is going to be okay, I think 24 months I'll be able to close on the deal. And also the seller is saying, okay, well, you can close on the deal in 24 months, you have to make your payments on time, you have to do blah, da, 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 da. And 24 months come, or 18 months come, 20 months come, and that's when the tenant, now buyer, is going to contact a real estate professional and also a lender and say, hey, listen, you know what, run my scores, you know, I want to get pre-approved to buy this house that I'm living in. I paid a huge deposit on the lease purchase, I've committed to terms in the lease purchase, and I want to be able to close this out in the next 4 months. What happens oftentimes is that they speak to the lender says, well, you know what, your situation is decent, but you're going to need to do these three things. These three things may take 6 months. So now you got to either one or two things, you got to come up with it a different way in terms of the amount of money that you need to cash out the seller, or number two, you're going to need to position yourself in order to be able to find another lender to be able to get you this money or renegotiate the deal with the actual owner of the property. That tends, the owner wants to renegotiate, but most of the time you're going to find yourself in a position where the owner is not willing to renew totally. They're going to keep the deposit, and you're still able to rent the home out from them, and it doesn't really work out. So as a rule of thumb, if you're looking to, as a tenant, and you're looking to purchase a home, doing a lease purchase, you want to speak to a lender now before you sign the agreement, because after the agreement is signed, it's a legal binding agreement, and so both parties are committed to their process based on what they agreed to in writing. And so all things being considered, the owner also needs to speak to a legal representative, and the tenant also needs to speak to a legal representative on the front end in order to structure the deal properly, with the probability of increasing the chances of the deal going through.